Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose.
And I'm your producer, Brittany.
And here at Finding Arizona podcast, we collect the local stories of all entrepreneurs and from around the valley. So join us at findingarizonapodcast.com, where you can hear every episode and see it as well at
YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment below who you want to see next on our show. And when you're ready to start your podcast, you found the right spot. Found House, your next podcast production company.
Now, let's get back to the show. Score big with SeatGeek. Whether it's concerts, sports, or live events, SeatGeek has you covered. Use code FindingArizona to get a fantastic $20 discount on your SeatGeek tickets. Catch your favorite live events hassle-free with extra savings. Visit SeatGeek.com and make every experience unforgettable. Welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose. As always, we bring in very special guests, and today is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to introduce you, the owner and creator behind Learning with Kelsey. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited.
I think it's wonderful because we were just chatting about my youngster is really the prime age for this box. It is something that I find so incredible as far as where you're delivering the information, how you're like breaking up these activities throughout the month. And I all transparency aside, we have had our first box given to us, and he's fantastic at it.
I
he
love
loves
it.
everything about it. So
I love that.
I have a lot of questions for you.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get into it. So my very first question is the one that we ask everyone who comes in through our doors is give us a little bit of your origin story. How did this all come to be?
Okay. Well, first of all, I am from Arizona. I love Arizona. I grew up here. I left for college for a few years and then came right back. So
Nice.
Gilbert, Arizona, hometown, and we're happy to be here. But I was a teacher.
Nice.
So I taught third grade, and then I taught for a few years. I taught kindergarten. And then when I had my first baby, I decided that I wanted to stay home.
Yes.
It's really hard to be a teacher and be a mom. It's like, all consuming.
It really is. So I'll admit to this. So I was his primary caregiver when it was the end of COVID. I felt a little bit more available on time as far as between our two jobs, like the way that how she works, I was more capable of working from home. And so I was just very it was hard just because I work more of a split shift. He was up during the daytime. So I wanted to be more present. But at the same time, I would not change any bit of it because having that special connection between the two of us now, because we've spent so much time together as his infancy, it's really great to have that relationship. So I see your boys, your whole family is adorable. So I imagine Owen really appreciated you being there for him as well. So it's different when you're the person who's like there always and like you're their universe.
Oh, it's okay. I can do both, but it was just it was so overwhelming to me. So we moved here actually. And then I stayed home. And the first year that I was not teaching, it was my first year ever not doing the first day of school, because since kindergarten, I'd always done the first day of school. I was so sad. Remember, I put him in the back of my car and I drove around to the schools. I'm like, look how happy they are going to their first day. I was like, it's just, I love teaching. So I'm like, okay, how can I still teach and do this? So I decided to open a preschool out of my house.
Oh.
And I taught just 12 kids in my house. And I kind of developed my own curriculum because I didn't find one that I loved. And I knew where they needed to be, having taught kindergarten. So I did that for 4 years and I loved it. It was so fun. It was the perfect mix of getting to be the mom I wanted to be and then teaching. And I taught both my boys, and then COVID happened and I had to close preschool.
Yeah.
And I was really sad because the end of the year is so fun in school,
Oh,
you know? And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
You're doing the butterfly, like all the fun things that they get to do. So I made little packets for my preschoolers.
Yeah.
And I put like every activity that we would do and the supplies they need. And I'd put them out on my porch for the moms to come grab. And then the moms just like kind of started posting about them, and people were like, okay, we're trapped with our kids. Like, what do we do with these people? Can we have one of those?
That's awesome.
Like, okay. So I started mailing them out of state. I made an Instagram just because I was like, okay, how can I tell people about this? And then I kind of just went for it. And from there, that's how Learning with Kelsey was born. So it's really crazy.
It's, and I say this a lot too, because we podcasted through COVID, and just kind of like finding those stories of resilience, finding those stories of overcoming the challenge of it. It's really one of those fascinating things about certain aspects of different people's careers, affected by what was going on, whether that's like a change in what they were doing, or just a reflection of themselves of like, oh, I do have something, that is undeniable about what I have as a service.
Yeah.
And how, they just kind of motivated themselves and willed themselves back to like floating above, just like hanging on there while that was all
crazy.
going down. So I definitely, I can really attest to this, where it's like when you pivot and you make that change into something that you already are loving, you just didn't know. It is a breath of fresh air almost, because it's like there's this horrible thing going around, but you have anxiety over it, but you have this thing that has now motivated you and kept you passionate about teaching, about education, about learning. And so I really do think that it's incredible that the universe worked out the way it did.
I know, it's really, because I always say, like, I would have never in a million years thought I would start a business. Like, I'm an elementary teacher, I had early childhood, but like business is not something that I would have ever done. So this is kind of the only way it would have happened for me.
I get it. I get it. Well, so let me ask you this, because some of the things that you brought up are so interesting in the fact that you had already taught in school. So there was a level of like, I know where they should be. And you had brought this up, that the curriculum that you had found online was not up to par, or even just stuff that you were seeking wasn't up to par. Can you give us a little bit more insight into that, of like why you felt it was necessary to make your own curriculum that was something that really challenged, maybe even allowed the student to really learn through the doing?
Yeah. So I am a really big proponent of hands-on learning, and, especially with little kids.
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of the things I was looking at were kind of them sitting and doing something, or it would have some aspect of hands-on, but not all together.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to build something that they were really like learning through play. And then also, I love themes. I don't know if this is an elementary school teacher thing, but I love a theme. So I'm like, I wanted September to be fall and October to be Halloween, and I wanted March to be rainbows. So like, I do think there is an element of excitement that comes from a theme for little kids.
Yeah.
So I really wanted a theme-based curriculum. And so that's kind of what led me to do it the way I did.
Yeah. And that's incredible that you had found that kind of, again, bringing all the circles that kind of light up your life and having it all overlap into this new thing that wasn't, it was just like incredible that you helped yourself that way. Because again, it's when you have a passion for something, it did, like the whole saying goes, when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life.
100%.
And so, sometimes people don't get that second like opportunity to kind of find something that there's like gives them the same kind of passion. And so
I know
it's really great.
I get to be excited about Valentine's Day every year, all the pink, all the fun. So it's
absolutely.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you for letting me know about that, because again, I think the level of what we're coming in with is kind of a novice understanding of what you did and are doing to make this a very prevalent in the fact that they're educating themselves and learning through doing, the student aspect of it, but also just providing the I want to say like there's a level of simplicity that like sometimes you can get over
for sure
over extend yourself with those boxes because sometimes it's like I've seen them all. Like I've seen a lot of them.
Oh yeah, there's so many different things.
Yeah, definitely come up on my For You page of like stuff that I'm like interested in because I continue as a parent to want to challenge myself of like,
oh, for sure.
Like, cardboard box and then let's get creative. Can we make a castle? Can we draw on it? Like all these things and really show him that imagination and learning through doing can really motivate you to do a lot of fun stuff that you wouldn't have done or would try it to do on like, let's say a school, like going to school every day. So it's like that level of creativity is important. And imagination, I've always said, is like, it's a one guaranteed way to like really show that you are trying your best at something. Because if you're using your brain on that level of like imagination, like getting creative, it shows that you care enough to want to try again and again if you fail.
For sure.
So,
and I kind of felt like as I made these, so I started with the preschool one and then I realized that there was this need the years before kindergarten, as a parent, you kind of feel like it's the only time that it's all on you, once they're in school, you feel like, okay, I have a partner that's helping me, making sure they're reading and doing this. But before kindergarten, you feel like it's all on you. And then also I kind of felt a pressure of like, these are the only years that they're with me, before they're out into the world. And so the 5 years before kindergarten are just like so special to me. And one thing that I really wanted these boxes to do is help create a connection between parent and child. Because this isn't like a box that you hand your kid and they do it by themselves. It's really something that you do with them. And it's like taking those 10 minutes a day where you're giving them your undivided attention and they're getting to create and learn with you. And I think that's just really powerful.
Yeah, it definitely, it gives me a little bit of creativity because some of the things or the activities really jolt your like, oh, let's like for me, especially, it's like, how do we take it up a notch? Or like, how do we make this even more of a challenge? Because he's mastered this. How do we get the next level into this? And so I've gotten like creative with it as well, where it's like, well, and also sciencey with it, where it's like, okay, what happens if we, instead of using a toilet, the tube, let's like, can we get a bigger tube? Like, what does that do when we use like a bigger tube and things like that? So I really do find it a level for the parents where it's like, okay, I know that this is supposed to be A. Can we do B and C? Can we show off these level of like, because you want to reuse it. Like for me too, it's like, I love these. These are really great projects. And I want to reuse them, but in different ways. Like, how can we do that? How can we push the envelope? So that I think that it's for everyone from all ages. And you can really, I think for my own mother, who's grandmother, it's like for the grandparents, it's one way of like connection through your, like, let's say my education was different from my parents.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they're like, oh, I remember doing this in school rather than this. And how, like, you kind of
so great for
get everyone involved that way.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you this because from the entrepreneurial side, I'd love to understand a lot of what we do for our work is supported through our loved ones. I wanted to ask you what your family thought or what your kids thought when you first came up with the concept of like, mommy wants to help people by doing this. And so like, I know with my significant other, doing this podcast was definitely an early start to my relationship with her, of like her wanting to help me do this and really showed me that she cared about me and my passion. So it's like, it really pushed our relationship further. But I'd love to hear from your perspective of like, when you first started, what were the conversations like?
Yeah. So my husband is like the greatest. He is the biggest supporter. He always was telling me like, you should start a business. You should start. Awesome. And I was always like, no, I can't start a business. So when I came with this, he was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is so great. Let's do it. So I felt like he was even more supportive than myself. Like he was like, when I would get stressed, he's like, well, just let's hire someone else to help you with that. Like you can do it. Keep going. I know you love this. So he was such a great help. And then my kids, I had 2 little boys at the time when I started.
Yeah.
And I remember they would like load the boxes up with me in my car and like drive it. So they've kind of been a part of all of this. And like through that time, I've actually had 2 more kids during this journey.
So there's more than just Goldie? Is there a 4th?
There's a 4th baby, Archie. Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
He turned 1 in November. So
that's incredible. Well, so look at you. Like
that's a lot going on over here.
Yeah. And far be it from me to also say it's like, it's also a level to look. It's also one level of like, you can now go back to like the early ages and be like, hey, look, this is what I'm doing with my 2 little ones. And then the older ages too, you have the construction method of like developing what you're trying to do because they're going into the next steps and the next phases of like science and reading and arithmetic and things like that. So it levels you up almost in the sense it's like we're going back and we're going forward.
I got all the ages. I've got 9 to 1. So we're not. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been fun. And then my husband actually quit his job in January to work full time with me. So
that's incredible.
So it's been really, the last couple months have been so incredible. It's been awesome.
That's really exciting. I know from our perspective too, because we're at that point now where we're getting clients who want to do work with us and we're getting excited because one of us has to start. Like, if we get any more, it's the tipping point of like one of us actually has to work from home,
jump in
and get involved a little bit more. So it's like that tipping point of like, how much further are we going with this? So I love that because it is exciting one part to turn your passion project into a job, but it's even more exciting when you can say, I can support the family on an extended family.
It's crazy.
And further along like that, because it's the wealth kind of brings in with you the opportunity to work more with your loved ones. So it is incredible. Congratulations.
No, thank you. Great. Yeah, it was, I mean, we work really well together. So it's been really good. And then, it's amazing that we kind of have our own schedules. We can always pick up our kids. We can do more with them. It's been just so great.
It's needed. Definitely needed.
Yeah.
I know we have to, because he's coming on spring break soon. So we have to like figure that out between our 2 schedules. What do we do? Yeah, exactly. So give me a little bit more of like, is there something that especially when you first started this, I mean, the box service can be interesting. Like the box, subscriptions can be interesting in the fact of like, especially during COVID, when you have a slowdown of like infrastructure of materials and stuff like that coming in regularly. Like, what for you, was it logistics? What was the first hurdle for you when you're doing this?
So I think the first biggest hurdle for us was just really quick growth, which is like, I like hate to say it because like that's a good problem. It's like saying my weakness is I'm too nice or something.
Yeah. Our first challenge was growing so big.
It was just like, so we were doing it in our house.
Yeah.
And then we were like, all of a sudden, like, we can't do this at our house anymore. And so we moved into like a small, like 500 square foot warehouse, area. We're like, okay, we just need this. And then within 2 weeks, we're like, okay, we don't need this. So then we moved into a 2,000 square foot warehouse and we were there for a year and we had signed a 3-year lease, of course, and we were like, okay, we're good. We can be in here. And then a week later, we're like, we got to get out of here. So we lasted about a year and a half and now we're in a 5,000 square foot warehouse and we're kind of like, I think we're almost out of this one too, but it's like, we keep thinking there's no way, like this is so huge, we'll never grow, but it's just, you don't want to slow your growth because you're not equipped to handle it, So I've kind of tried to err on the side of like over hiring a little, over ordering, just because we kind of are now in a point where we can like see where our growth is going. But it's just like, you're guessing. I feel like I'm guessing every month of like, what will our numbers be? I don't know.
The thing with me too, especially is that feeling, it extends in every sort of situation. For me in particular, with our career path, I've always felt like it was never about the numbers for me. This in itself, being that it is a passion project, I like collecting these stories and meeting these people. To me, that's what excited me and gave me kind of the urge to keep doing it and urge to want to perfect it and get better at it. It wasn't until Britt kind of really sat down with me, like, what do we want to do with this? Like, what are you really trying to get out of this? And now it's kind of propelled it into a business track and how we look at ourselves and our numbers. I just, again, I still fall back on like, I love this. They will have to pry the microphone from my hands before I stop. And so that is definitely something that kind of, it comes in different waves and it comes in different forms where it's like that level of like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And I just kind of keep going. I keep chugging on. You just
have to ride it, And I feel like the reason that I've been able, I'm a perfectionist in that I'm a type A personality. I'm organized, but like, I also am kind of like, okay, I'm just going to try it. Like, I feel like if I was wanting things to be perfect, I would have never like fully gone for it. So like, I'm like, okay, this warehouse like looks pretty good. Like, it's not perfect. It's not exactly right, but like, let's just go for it and let's just try it. And I mean, same thing, like when I very first started, like, I'm like, okay, I'll make a logo on Canva. I don't know. and I changed it later, but like, I was just like, let's just go. And
you gotta go. We gotta move.
Kelsey. I don't know.
That's incredible because again, where I'm probably in the beginning where like, I was probably in the same boat because I was like, I need to get going. And so I was like, how do I make the logo? How do I I just got to pick something. And that's what I kept telling myself. Just do it and then figure it out. Like if someone says something to you, then you can fix it later.
You can change it later. You can always change it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, like what was the box simplistic and like, was there less of a monthly thing? Like was the first like 1.0 versus what we have today? Like, was there big significant changes? Why was there any changes like that to the box? Like, give us kind of the highlights.
Yeah. So when I very first started, it was my preschool curriculum. So it was like almost like teaching your child preschool at home.
Okay.
And especially with COVID, that was like really helpful to people. But like, as we came out of that, I felt like, okay, this is kind of overwhelming for the average mom that's not a teacher, because it was like broken down by lesson plans, by weeks, so many things. And I kind of realized like, if I'm wanting moms to just spend time with their kids and not be overwhelmed, I need it to be more simple. I need it to be something that they can do quickly, 10 to 15 minutes. So I developed 20 activities a month. So it's one for each weekday. And that to me made sense, was a little bit easier for them to do. And then, you could cross it off, you can keep track. It was kind of a fun way for them to do it. And like when I started, like I said, I only had preschool. And then I had moms saying, oh, can my 2-year-old do this? I had so many people saying, can my 2-year-old do it? And I was like, yeah, 2-year-olds are hard, because it's like they want to do things, but there really isn't as much for a 2-year-old. And a 2-year-old is so different from a 4-year-old. I think that was the biggest difference in my box from other ones where they say, okay, this is for 3 to 5-year-olds, but it's like, okay, a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old are vastly different. So I was like,
very true. Very true.
So I made the toddler box and that is actually our best seller now. So
awesome.
That was kind of an after I got going, I did the toddler box and that's for 2 to 3-year-olds. So it's like the very first intro, they're really working on fine motor skills, colors, things like that to kind of prep them for the preschool box. But that was our first one. That's like our first additional thing that we added in and it ended up being our best. So
that's awesome. I love those kind of stories again, because you don't know what you don't know. And that's something that we've picked up from this podcast is just like, again, until you get going, you don't see the bumps and the hills and all of that stuff until you actually are there and you're like, oh man, this is something, this is a route. Like, all of that just is picked up along the way through, coincidence or through, what is molded through the experience is just something that is different for everyone. So, I know
it's hard because you think that people like know what they're doing. But I think when you realize like nobody knows what we're doing.
Yep. We're all trying. We're all trying well.
Guessing and we're all trying our best. But like, I'm really good at Google. So
That's great. So again, we were talking about your career and just how this all came to be. And I know from being in the weeds myself as an entrepreneur, what excites me a lot of the times are new developments and new kind of practices in not only the education but just overall the thing that you're doing. Whether that's even also like in production, the production side, maybe like a fresh new box design or something like that. So it's
yeah.
like, what are the types of things that get you excited nowadays? Because especially I imagine it's the next level and also going and reverting back and perfecting your stuff because of your kids. They bring so much like understanding through
Yeah.
their growth and development.
Yeah. So I think something that I'm really excited about that we just did is we just filmed an ad.
Oh,
Like that was like a production company, like a big
nice.
ad.
Yeah,
So that was really cool. I've never done anything like that before. And it was like the coolest thing I've ever done. So
I bet.
I'm so excited to see that come and see like the lift that that can bring. But
Yeah.
other than that, like it's really exciting. Like you're saying, the packaging is like so dumb, but like we used to pump paint into little cups, like all the girls in my warehouse.
Oh,
They would pump it into cups and they put the lid on it, put it in the bag. And then now we have bottles of paint that come done that we source.
yeah.
So like getting little things like that has been really exciting and cool, like changes. Like they were like, wait, we don't have to pump 5,000 paints. I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's again through the experience of learning. It's like, production wise, like this made sense for you.
Yeah,
Now
for
moving
sure.
further along and expanding, you're like, well, we don't need to do like we can easily enough source it and find
Yes.
some alternative to it. But
Mm-hmm.
you don't know unless you
Oh yeah,
compare
you have no
it. Where
idea.
it's like
And you think
this
like,
seems the easiest way.
yeah,
Like
I know. I'm like, well, and when we're doing 500, I'm like, oh, it's not bad. But doing 10,000, it's like, that's really hard.
yes, yes, very much so. But again, it's like I love again how great that these products that you provide is like again simplistic in the sense it's like it's an easy open cap.
Mm-hmm.
He can squeeze it. I don't have to be there
Yes.
to help him like get him to. But I like to, but he's a very independent.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'll do it, and so it's easy enough for him where he can squeeze out a right amount onto a bowl or something that he's painting with, and then use the brush. I
Mm-hmm.
just again smart like things like that like where I'm like I'm busy. I need to like
Yes.
I
Yes.
can't
You just want
source
to like
all the
be able to do
stuff.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And
And you don't want to
so,
store a huge thing of paint. That's kind of
Mhm.
another thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So everything's appropriately sized and it's just overall, it's like these types of things that you guys are providing are really truly helpful in the sense of these moments with him too, as I'm like so intrigued by his learning and how he sees the world that I want to be present. I can't be just like fiddling with all the
Yes.
stuff and getting it all sourced and getting it ready for him. I like to be in the moment with him. And so
Mm-hmm.
having the opportunity to not worry about that and just listen and follow directions and follow with him is
Yeah.
just again a credible moment and through my eyes and hopefully he'll remember that just as much because I share with my passion and when he gives me something that's done and he's proud of, I'm like,
Oh,
this
I
is
love
great,
that.
buddy. This is great.
It's so fun.
Yeah. He's proud of himself a lot of the time too, where
Yeah.
he's like, I did it. Again, I look to you too also for like guidance on what keeps you like where do you go for inspiration? Because this is not something again, I would imagine if you were continuing on and learning through the work career path, I can see that happening a little bit further as far as like that feeds what you build as your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing it constantly, like what's giving you creativity to help you move into these different opportunities and realms of like higher education? Now you're going probably like, again, looking at all the stuff that you guys provide and services, it's kind of interesting what you can get as far as the different pieces and like glue sticks and stuff like that, like coming up with different projects and
Yeah.
especially for the motifs of the month and stuff like that. I would love to hear what gives you inspiration for those.
Yeah. Well, I think my biggest inspiration is my kids. Like you said, I have such big age difference, so many different ages. I have 9, 6, 3, and then 1. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm doing things with them all the time. And that's been a really big source of inspiration, is just kind of seeing what they like, what they're into. I test a lot of things on them. I'm like, hey, what about this? Or we'll do something. And I'm like, okay, that we are never putting in a box. Like that does not work. But so this year I actually am teaching preschool again.
Oh, great.
I just added one more thing. My husband was like, oh my gosh, please don't. But my daughter is 3. And I'm like, I have to teach her because I taught my boys. So I have like a little class of just 8 kids, 7 girls and 1 boy. It's so fun.
That's great.
And that's been like a good source of inspiration too, because I get to do a lot of my activities with them and then kind of see, when you have a little kid, like they'll take something you gave them and do something completely different. And you're like, okay, wait, that's actually better. I actually like that idea better. You're so smart. So that's been a fun thing for me.
I think that's incredible because, again, like I go back to what I was saying, where it's like when you are doing it, you can also kind of stop yourself from like further educating yourself or giving you an opportunity to expand the knowledge of what you're trying to do. So allowing yourself to even have that time to like, let's go back to preschool and let's educate. It's really incredible. So I find that glorious because, again, there's no route for me to be like, oh, I'm going to just go back to listening to podcasts.
That's true.
But I learned through just trying my best to like educate myself on the different techniques. Mm-hmm. How can I make sure that I'm feeding my audience with the right stuff that they want to hear, what also that I'm passionate about as well. So how do we connect those two elements? But again, it's incredible that you are just as busy as you are and you find time to be this kind of super mom. This is incredible.
My husband's like, when I'm laminating at 10 p.m., he's like, oh my gosh, why did you do that?
You're just deaf glaring
but
him.
It's so
fun. So again, I look to you because, again, what are some things too that are coming down the road with AI that is helping you kind of build upon this? Because I find this fascinating that it's affected so many different careers in just like different areas. Has there been an update for you as far as either building curriculum or building something that allows you to really use AI on a personal scale?
So what we've been using it for the most lately is more like the logistics side of our business. Like, especially with my husband stepping into more of a full-time role, he's like the COO now. So he's been using it for like, okay, does it make sense to do this plan for our Shopify? There's so many like there's so many different things that they can try to sell you on in businesses too.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like, without a business background, you can kind of feel lost. So AI has been super helpful for that. Like we'll kind of use ChatGPT to like, here's where we're going. Here's what we think we want to do. Does that make sense? And that's been really helpful for us.
That's great. Again, I love learning too, because I would have never thought about it in that perspective of like asking it, I guess, look at the bigger picture of like, let's step back. This is something that we're doing. This is where we want to lead. What are the steps to get from A to B, or does A and B even work as a path?
Yes. It's been really helpful with that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now I'm kind of now interested too with your warehouse. It's like, how does that break up? Are you like doing the stacks of like what looks like Amazon? They're like giant like baskets and pulling out from the baskets. And like, I would love an opportunity of like a walkthrough.
Oh yeah,
like,
you should totally come down and walk through. It's so fun. So a really cool also element about my business is that we have 20 people on staff right now, and majority are moms, which is really, really cool.
That's great.
They drop their kids off at school and then they come work at our warehouse from 8 to 2, and then they go pick their kids up. So
perfect.
It's really cool for that. But also we pack monthly. So like we don't have like a stack of inventory because we're packing for the month. Yeah. So like right now we're always like a month ahead. We're always like, what month is it? We don't, because right now they're packing April boxes. So
yeah.
So it's like, we have like an assembly line where they're like going down and putting each thing in the bag. And then after they bag everything, then we do boxes. So it's like at the end of the month, the 15th is when subscriptions go through. So that's when we can start sending them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that at that point in the month, it's like chaos down in our warehouse because we have like huge, big Gaylords filled with the boxes that the USPS will come and pick up. Yeah. But it's again, that's something that we've had to like hone in and learn. Like, okay, this doesn't work for our system. This does, but it's just we're always learning something new.
I bet your warehouse looks like Santa's warehouse during the November, December.
Oh my gosh. Christmas, we were done with Christmas by December 1st. We were like, wait, what month are we done with our presents?
That's incredible. Yeah, because I imagine it's just like them wearing the hats.
We got hats. Jingle bells everywhere. It's fun.
And just the amount of like Christmas stuff that you're actually packing away too. It's just like so Santa's warehouse.
Yeah, February, it was like our whole warehouse was pink. And I'm like, okay, this is my favorite warehouse.
Nice. Again, I look towards the future a lot of the times with our conversations. And this is something that I find interesting because from your perspective, there is this level of growth that you've kind of been bewildered with of just the early get-goes of when you started and how this is growing. I want to hear from you. It's like, do you get even more excited about maybe expanding even further and making this a biggest, like, I can imagine that a lot of people are intrigued by this, but it's like, how do you regulate that? Like, how for you, do you find yourself like, okay, we're at 20 workers, employees. What's the next step? Is it 50? Is it 100? Like, how does this all kind of culminate?
Yeah. So right now, like our biggest goal for this year is to get to 20,000 subscribers.
Nice.
And so at that point, we're like, okay, if we do get there, we would have to get a bigger warehouse. Yeah. But I think a lot of our stuff is coming now sourced pre-done. Like the pom-poms are pre-bagged. Bags are now coming kind of like different things pre-bagged in those. So I think hopefully with that, we're able to just add like 5 to 10 more employees and not have to like double our employees to double our number is what we're trying to get better at. Just because it's the logistics of, having that many employees is kind of like chaotic and crazy. Yeah. But so I think like narrowing in on our box, what can we do systems wise to make this make a little bit more sense for the people packing it? And then just what can we get sourced? What can we get pre-done and still keep it the way that we want to keep it,
Yeah. That's incredible. Again, you are just an intriguing person altogether to go from a teacher to now an entrepreneur and going back to being a teacher and mom. And,
doing a little both now.
Yeah. It's just, again, I find myself fascinated just because you are someone that is just enjoying life, who's really found a niche for herself in the sense that like you can have the fluidity of the ease of schedule and then just also find joy and passion through just your kids growing up. It's just one incredible thing. And so, I have very much a rhetoric of like, you're a cool person. And I think that's really great. You're doing great things, Kels. And I don't know what else to say other than you're doing great work. And
my gosh.
I appreciate you.
Yeah. I love being a mom, and that kind of has been my driving force behind all of this. That's my favorite thing in my life. So being able to create a business that helps me to still get to be really a present mom has been incredible. It's been a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of nights where I'm up until 2 a.m. doing it because I've spent the day with my kids, but it's been worth it.
Great. I love hearing that. And that kind of concludes our conversation today. And I really do appreciate you highlighting that on the end of this conversation. It's just, again, they give us joy and they give us passion, and we might as well steer into it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So this is where you get to promote the business at hand, give everyone a chance to know where they can find you online, social media. If you have anything that you want to highlight, the floor is yours. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Learning with Kelsey. Also on TikTok. I'm not as good at TikTok, but I'm trying.
Same. Totally same.
I'm like, I got to be better. I'm more Gen Z. And then also learningwithkelsey.com is where you can buy the boxes. And we are selling our April box right now. It's really cute. It's spring themed. So I would highly recommend it. But people can order there. If you have any questions, you can always DM us, and we're happy to help people with what box to get or steer them in the right direction.
Awesome. I very much enjoyed March's box. It was a lot of fun, a lot of colorful, he's going to come in here with the gold coin.
Oh yes. That one's so cute.
He will show you his. And before we go, we do have an outro for ourselves. You can hear every episode of our podcast at fightingarizonapodcast.com. Social media wise, we are under Fighting Arizona Podcast under everything. And last but not least, we end every conversation with the kisses, hugs, and belly rubs to our four-legged friends. We will see you next time. Bye, y'all.